Hi guys, and welcome to another review. This time around I bring you the ARTTI T10. This is a planar IEM from a brand that I had never heard of before. But as I am always a sucker for finding unknown brands and for bringing you guys brands which we've never heard of and products that we've never heard of in the never-ending search for that amazing IEM that brings you that cost to performance ratio, which is unbelievable, and the sound which is just unreal, and the endless pursuit of a perfect sound for a good price. Let's put it that way. I had to get it, and I immediately got it, and I've had the ARTTI T10 now for about maybe 3 weeks. Yes, easily about 3 weeks. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, I had other IEMs that I wanted to review, and I also wanted to give my time listening to the T10 and letting myself get acquainted with it a little bit more in detail. And as is the case when you do that kind of thing, you usually don't regret it, because initial impressions are one thing, but then afterwards, when you start listening to things with more calm and with a little bit more poise, you start picking up on those qualities, or those non-existing qualities that you like or that you look for. And in the case of the T10, my first impressions were very impressive, and the more I've listened to it, the more I confirm those first listening impressions. I think that some of you might have thought that I was going to say the exact opposite now, but no. This is a case where, listening to it now for, like I said, about 3 weeks on and off, and between other IEMs, and sometimes going out and just taking the IEM and listening to it outside, not only in the ideal conditions of where I usually listen to, of my lounge, my room, whatever it happens to be. I have to say that the T10 is a nice IEM. It is a very, very nice IEM. Well, anyway, just before I carry on, let me just show you the box. The box, simple affair, nothing special. If there is one thing that kind of got my attention, is that I don't know why, maybe it's just me, but I got the vibe of Let's Sure when I was undoing this box. Okay, and you'll understand where I'm getting with that in a second. You open up the box itself. The IEMs came over there. You took this out, some paperwork, the usual stuff that comes. One of the sets of tips are these white, very generic type tips. Okay. And then a carrying case, which I'll also show to you in a second. So very simple, straight to the point, no frills, nothing unnecessary, let's put it that way. If you consider the price of around $80, which you could get it slightly cheaper when it was launched, I got mine for $65. Obviously, I'm in Europe, so I'm paying a certain amount of taxes. I've heard of people that have gotten it for as low as $50. It's actually quite good. It actually is quite competitive, the price. So that's the box. This is the carrying case. It's small, but it fits the IEM perfectly. It's got then these other tips, which, if you look at them, they are the tips which usually come with the Let's Sure stuff. Okay, all right. And then the cable. The cable had a little detail here. Let me just show you. Although the actual terminations of it say ARTTI, okay, the little cable thing that holds it, look what it says. Interesting, no? I guess that's interesting that it says that. Anyway, carrying on now here with the actual IEM, and the cable, when you look at it, it does look very familiar to the cables that come with the Let's Sure stuff. As you can see, it's a nice quality cable, 4-core, beautiful, nothing to be said there. The IEMs are this kind of bullet style, and they come in this kind of beige color. How can I put this now in a nice manner so that it doesn't come across as a negative criticism? The first thing that I think was totally unnecessary was this back plate here in this manner. it just doesn't blend, period. It just doesn't blend, and it actually makes the IEM look cheap. That, coupled to the fact that it's got this beige color, which basically looks like the raw color when you do a 3D printing shell, a 3D printed shell, it's not helping out, honestly. And you know, I have to admit, when I first saw the IEM, I was like, oh my god, these things look so cheap, and they really do not look the part. They don't. I mean, you know, you pick up a KZ, and this is a PR1 Pro, and this looks the business. This looks really nice. Nice shell, nice faceplate. It looks the business. And the truth, you know, be told, the ARTTI, the T10 does not have that in its favor. Anyway, the shell fits nicely. I didn't really have any issues with the shell. Only a slight little problem here with the actual curvature here of the ear hook, which I gave it a little bit of heat and it was straight away resolved. It was a little bit closed when I first got it, and like I said, the fit is fine. It's perfect. It's this round bullet kind of style. I don't know what to call it really, but it actually fits quite nicely. It has kind of a little bit of the timeless vibe going to it, although the timeless was round like this, but then it still had that large, let's say, back plate. But it actually fit nicely, and the truth is, like I said, this actually does fit nicely. It's not offensive. It's not a heavy IEM. That's it. It sports, according to them, a 14.2 millimeter driver, planar driver. And you know, here now lies something which I want to bring to you guys' attention. Basically, you know, there's 14.2, 14.5, and 14.8 millimeter. And in essence, they are very much always the same driver. Yes, that driver has been improved from a single magnet side, from a single magnet setup on one of the sides of the diaphragm to a double magnet. But it's very much always the same driver. And then, you know, to further confirm that, and the only one that actually falls out of that size and that equality is the KZ drivers, which are 13.6, and they are their own drivers made in-house. But the remainder of the drivers used by all the other brands are very much always the same driver. And when you actually look at the tuning that many of these IEMs then have, it further compounds and further confirms what I'm saying, that they are basically the same driver. And what is happening is that the different manufacturers are giving their own little touch in tuning. But ultimately, the differences are never really huge. On the one side, they are going to be obviously differences, but they're never really huge. And what does differ is then you either notice more or less the planar timbre, the planar tonality, and you either have more a planar which has a DD kind of feel, or it doesn't have a DD kind of feel and it's got a more planar feel. And by saying that, what I'm saying is that when it has a more planar feel, yes, it ultimately is more detailed, but that detail can come across sometimes as not genuine, as being a little bit colored, as being a little bit fake, as being a little bit pushed, but also can become fatiguing. It can also be just a little bit too much, all right? While when the planar is tuned in a manner where it approximates itself more to like a DD, yes, you do away with that planar, or you do control that planar timbre slightly. You might lose a little bit in ultimate detail, but what you gain in listenability and non-fatigue is, I think, enough to justify. So it's a game of compromise. Basically, all planars are a game of compromise. Then you have brands like Nice HDK, like the Hydis MP145, which I unfortunately do not have it here, and that's why I'm not going to be talking too much about it. They have, and even the TRN, the Kirin, they adopted tuning nozzles, which would allow you to change slightly the sound. Some was more effective, others less. The MP145 is probably one of the ones that change of the nozzles is quite noticeable. And there you have it. In a nutshell, I wanted to get that out of the way, which is most planars are using the same driver with very slight differences between the actual driver, and it's just then the different way they are tuned, which then differentiates the sound that these drivers all have. Okay, so what is the sound here of the T10 like? Well, the sound of the T10 is a sound which is warm. in the sense that it's got a nice real sub bass focus, more than enough mid bass impact and presence in my opinion, but it's not an impact which is very visceral. It's there, it's present, but it doesn't have that DD kind of snappiness, all right, which, mind you, is very much a planar characteristic. Most planars, that's the way they handle the mid bass, unless it is purposely, let's say, boosted. And when it's purposely boosted, then yes, you will get a little bit more slam. But the majority of them, they are tuned in a manner where the mid bass comes across as present enough, it does its job, but it's not that mid bass which is like really smacking you in the ears hard or in the back of the neck hard or anything. No, it is there present. The sub bass in the T10 is very commendable, actually, very, very nice. So you always have that sense of rumble from behind, and when you listen to things like Pancakes and Butter from Jason Mraz, or Suffer from Charlie Puth, or Puth, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, Puth I think would be the proper way, or Lipstick even from Charlie Puth as well. It gives those songs a nice bass presence, mids are very well executed. You've got a very, very, very relaxed pin again, and then it just plateaus right across with a little bit of a peak, coupler related, and then it just drops off in a very relaxed manner. So the whole mids, upper mids, and treble are very smooth, non-sibilant, non-aggressive. Nothing jumps out. Male and female vocals are equally well done, in my opinion. What you will notice is that as a planar, and as all good planars, it needs power. So at lower volumes, it will sound maybe not excessively, but extra dark, okay? And then when you start giving it power and you start turning up the volume, it comes alive. And it's an absolute pleasure to listen to the T10. It's very much an IEM that has, in that aspect, kind of reminds me of the P1 Max, the T10 HIFI, which is one of my favorite planars. The P1 Max has that sound that when you listen to it initially at lower volumes, yes, there's a lot of detail there because it has got slightly more emphasized upper mids and treble as compared to the T10, but also a product of not having the same bass, so that area then does come up a little bit more. But it doesn't really start shining until you crank the volume. And then when you crank the volume, and if you've got a good, decent power source, it comes alive, and it's a tremendous IEM. It is honestly one of the hidden gems in terms of planars that people never really gave it its deserved value. Maybe because of some reviewers not having extracted the best performance out of it and conveyed their opinion, which was not really showcasing the true abilities of the P1. But the T10 and the P1 shared very much that same commonality in terms of sound. There are two IEMs here which approximate them. Well, not two. If I have to be honest, I mean the Nice HTK, the F1, the Tangzu Wu Zetian, and the Let's Sure, be it the more the original actually than the Pro, they all graph very equal up to about 2K with the T10. It's all very the same. It's all very much the same thing. It's then how the energy of the end part of the mids into the upper mids, and then how the treble is handled, and the different ways that those sections are handled, that then differentiates the way they come across. So in that aspect, I would say that the one that's the most approximate in sound to the T10 is the Nice HTK, the F1. The F1, again, another IEM that went very much under the radar. The F1 and the T10 share very much the same sort of sound. A little bit extra sub bass here, but hardly even noticeable, okay? And then the mids and the treble and very equal, very, very equal. When I compare it to the Wu Zetian, it has got the same sort of, let's say, mids up, or transition from mids to upper mids and treble as the T10, but it's slightly more energetic. And what that means is in certain songs like Belle Done Sans Remorse from Chris Botti, when you crank the volume on the Wu Zetian, you can feel that sex wanting to bite you, while over here it doesn't happen. Okay, this what I said about the Wu Zetian also happens for the Let's Shure S12 Pro. Although in the S12 Pro, the area which is more pronounced as compared to the T10 is actually the area of the treble. Already slightly above 5K, that is more pronounced, and it makes itself noticed, so it can get a little bit a little bit off whack, and I'm not going to say aggressive, but a little bit intense. And the same thing again applies itself to the original S12, although the S12, that extra little bit that exists across the the finishing part of the mids, the upper mids, and the treble. So these kind of have a very similar vibe, just with different levels of the mids and trebles. Compared to the P1 Max, the fact that the P1 Max noticeably has less bass energy straight away doesn't allow there to be a more fair comparison in terms of the sound, because that one will always sound extra detailed, although it graphs very flat. It always sounds more detailed than here because it doesn't have the same bass energy. However, the interesting thing is it's not because of that it sounds better, or that it has significantly better detailed retrieval, or significantly better abilities to give you a perceived sound stage or imaging. No, they actually very much trade blows. There is not really an outright winner here. And then compared with the KZ, it actually has again a lot of characteristics which are very common in terms of the bass and the initial part of the transition of the mid bass into the mids, and so very similar. Where then the KZ starts falling apart is not the correct word, but showing a little bit more of its planar DNA, which it's obviously it's going to show that, but it shows it in a way which is maybe not the preferred manner for many of us, is then in the 8, 9, 10 and above 10K area, where there's a lot more energy, and that the correct word is maybe not sheen, but that metallicness of the timbre, it comes across, and so it makes the KZ, especially when you start turning the volume, a little bit more fatiguing. At low volume, yes, the KZ is absolutely amazing, and I'm one of those that the PR1 Pro is for me better than the PR2. Initially, when I heard the PR2, and also I messed around a little bit with the PR2, I saw the PR2 as being possibly better than the PR1 Pro, but after listening a little bit more, it's more calm, a little bit more detail, taking my time to really compare the two. A stock PR1 Pro and a stock PR2, the PR1 Pro is better than the PR2. That's my opinion. There is not one single song that I saw the PR2 actually outdoing the PR1. It's a little bit less mid-bass focused than the PR1, so it immediately there starts even losing out. And then the way that it handles the upper mids and the treble is just less polished than the PR1 Pro. Coupled to the fact as well that then there was that issue of KZ having changed slightly the way that it was tuned, with the removal of that filter over the actual driver and changing the nozzle filters and so on and so forth. I still feel that the PR1 Pro is the safer one to go for, and it sounds really, really nice. If you choose your source carefully, there's very little that will disappoint you in the PR1, and it will trade blows with IEMs which are significantly more expensive, and it is still, for me, one of the better IEMs that KZ has made. All right, even with all the newest releases that they've had, some pretty interesting releases lately, the AS24 and so on and so forth, the PR1 Pro is still up there in that top IEMs that KZ has brought us. So that's the KZ. The F1, like I said, very similar. The overall sound is really, there's nothing much there. The Wu Zetian, again, very similar, just a little bit extra energy, which will ultimately maybe just start showing a little bit more the planar negativity that comes with planars when you really push them. I could have compared it to the Heyday, but I just I thought it made more sense to actually compare it to the original Wu Zetian, because there was more units of those out there. And then with the S12s, it's like I said, very similar in the bass and in the lower section of the mids. Just the upper mids and the treble are more pronounced there, and they ultimately become a little bit more fatiguing, a little bit more overly energetic. please, keep in mind when I say fatiguing, it's in comparison with this. I'm sure that there will be people that will enjoy the way the S12 comes far, puts forward its music playback, and won't find it that way. But it's, for me, I find the T10 to be just overall a little bit extra smoother. That's it. That's, I think, the best way of putting it. I mean, when I show you now the graphs, you'll understand. In terms of then its technical capabilities, technically for me, and I've always considered that as well, technically the one that I find is the most capable is the P1 Max. Okay, the Wu Zetian very close, and the F1 also very close. So these three are probably the ones that technically are the most capable out of all of them. The detailed retrieval is very good on the P1 Max, very good, and the T10 is slightly below that. It's not as detailed as the P1, probably on the level of the nice HTK of the F1, just ever so slightly below the Wu Zetian. But the good thing about the T10 is that if those IEMs are perhaps a little bit more detailed at lower volumes, and yes, it's noticeable where this one sounds just a little bit more closed down. When you crank the volume, this comes up and wakes up in a manner which just then brings out a whole different sound, and then the detailed retrieval here becomes comparable, if not better, than those where some of them, especially the Wu Zetian, just starts showing a little bit of starts losing a little bit of its polish. Okay, the P1 and the nice HTK, funny enough, even when you crank the volume, they still maintain themselves pretty composed, pretty well, let's say, capable. Okay, compared to the S12s. Again, at lower volumes, yes, the S12s will be more detailed, there's more, of everything there. But it's when you start cranking up the volume that you start seeing the S12s losing their posture and becoming a little bit overly energetic, and things becoming colored in a manner which then becomes fatiguing. And ultimately, that's kind of the message that I want to put out here about the T10. The T10 was tuned, in my opinion, I mean, I'm not sure if it was Lecture that tuned this for them or not, but whoever tuned the T10 knows what he's doing. And the nice thing about it is that, much like the High-Des MP145, they seem to have taken into account what is out there in terms of other products and applied it in a very intelligent manner. So it's got a lot of the planar characteristics in terms of it's still got that detailed retrieval that you expect. It's still got that ability to create space and have atmosphere, fine. But it has also made compromises in terms of doing away with that negativity that is associated with planars, and giving it a DD-esque kind of feel. So there's very much a DD-esque kind of timbre and tonality, and the timbre and tonality of the T10, I think, is its best technical characteristic. Okay, definitely the best technical characteristic is the timbre and tonality, and in second place I would probably say then the imaging is probably its second best ability. The rest of the technicalities are very much on par with the rest of them. If you keep the volume always the same, very much on par. The one that ultimately maybe is slightly below the others is the detailed retrieval, simply because the other ones are tuned in a more energetic manner. But again, when you crank the volume here, that advantage that the others have diminishes, and it doesn't become as noticeable. And that's it, guys. I mean, look, I'll show you the graphs now. The T10 is, in my opinion, a solid IEM, very solid planar. The $80 or just below $80 that it costs, I think is even considering that they could have maybe paid a little bit more attention to the finish of the IEM and made it look a little bit more premium, let's put it that way. I can look over that easily because the sound is genuinely good. It is genuinely a nice, engaging sound that will satisfy the majority of people and gives an option for those which do not have money to buy the more expensive planars, which doesn't necessarily mean that they will get a better sounding planar into the planar game. So, for those of you that, I don't want to buy a KZ because I don't like the KZ's politics and how they handle this or that, blah, 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 blah. Well, at under $100, you really only have two options. Well, you have another one now, which is the Truth Years Melody, but that's a different story. I still haven't heard it. I don't know what it's like. But you really only have two options. It's the P1 Max, which very often is at $99, and I've seen it even at $90 at Linsoul, mind you. And you have now the ARTTI T10. Between the two of them, which is the best? Honestly, there isn't a better one because they are tuned too differently for there to be an outright winner. They are both very capable and very good side grades to each other. As compared to the more expensive planars, to be totally honest, the only thing you're getting with the more expensive planars is better build quality. You are not necessarily getting a sound which is significantly better. You're not. I love the F1. I think the F1 is a fantastic IEM, but in terms of pure sound and putting aside that once you've tuned it the way you like, you're probably not going to mess around with the knobs and so on and so forth, the F1 doesn't offer a sound which is justifying more or less twice the price of the T10, and the same applies to the Wuzetyan, the same applies to the S12s. There isn't anything as compared to the KZ. It's like I said, the KZ, it's got a very capable driver. It's yes, okay, it's another option, okay, but I didn't want to mention too much because of all the things that have been going on lately with KZ and people being so angry and this and that. But you do notice that the KZ, especially in the upper mids and treble, is not as polished as the T10 is, or rather, there might be a group of people that will appreciate its energy. I'm not denying it, and I personally don't dislike that energy that it has, although I have to control my volume. But I enjoy more the T10. The T10 has got more my personal preference going, and I see myself cranking up more the volume on the T10 than I do on the KZ, precisely because I want to stay away from those areas that are a little bit then too much for me. The above 10k energy and the metallicness that it brings, it's just a little bit disconcerting for me at times. But otherwise, I mean, the KZ, putting aside all other aspects, the truth is it is a very good IEM. The PR1 is a very good IEM. Let's be honest about it. That's the truth. Guys, let me show you another graphs and we'll wrap it up. All right, take care. Hi guys, and welcome now to the graph section for the ARTTI T10. This is the graph of the T10, and as you can see, very nice sub-bass focus. A very like a kind of a gliding style of a bass. It's basically flat by just over 200 hertz, so it's not really bleeding into the mids. There's no bleed. The pin, again, as I said, it's very relaxed, very very smooth in the way that it's done for a planar, mind you. It peaks at around 2.2, then kind of maintains itself pretty flat with just a little minor peak there, which is really isn't noticed, and then another peak there at 8, which is very much a couple, and then some extension past 10k, which is not emphasized, and that is a excuse me, that is a good thing, at least in my books. Everything sits within a 76 everything sits within basically a 10 dB window, let's put it that way. I mean below 40 hertz you really don't have much, and but if everything stays within a 10 dB window, you could say that yes, it is a V-shaped IEM, and yes, there are occasions where that V-shaped kind of signature does come across, but for the most part I didn't find it to be V-shaped. I found it to be a nice neutral with the emphasized bass signature. That's the way I kind of felt that it sounded. Okay, now let me start showing you then some of the IEMs. The first one I'm going to show you is the PR1 Pro. And as you can see, very similar in the bass. I mean, the difference that happens there is not even significant. The different size in the driver does mean that there is a little bit more of a perception of the bass in terms of the T10 as compared to the KZ, but really it's not there where you see the difference. You can see as well that very much that whole area between 2 and 8K is very much the same thing as well. It's then the extension past 10K, which this area here makes itself shown in a little bit of extra metallicness, okay? And then the fact that the bass doesn't sound as big as what it graphs also makes the KZ sound overall brighter. Nice at lower volumes, but a little bit fatiguing when you start cranking up the volume, where this area here of the treble can become a little bit just overly energetic and not harsh or truly aggressive, anything of the sort, but just too much. So that's the KZ. Next one I'm going to show you. Actually, let me just change the color here of the nice HIFI so we can see a little bit better. Let me make it, let me see, red, so it shows nicely. All right, there we go. The nice HIFI, like I said, it's probably the one that actually graphs the most similar to the T10. Again, this difference here, that's here, it's not audible. The bass is basically the same style, and then the whole transition from mids, upper mids, treble, everything is very, very, very equal. I mean, there's really there's not much in it, trust me. Maybe the nice HIFI on occasion sounds just a little bit more detail up top, with a little bit more, but they are very, very equal. And mind you, this is also the way I've set up the nozzles on the nice HIFI, because it does have extendable nozzles. The truth is, the nice HIFI is a very underrated IEM that didn't really get much attention. It's a pity because it's very, very good. Okay. Next one I'm going to show you now are the lecturers. I'll show you the S12, the original one first. So that's the original S12, and this one in red is the S12 Pro. Okay, so what are the differences here? You can see that the S12, the original, has got basically the same sort of bass, just maybe a little bit less sub-bass extension. It's just that extra energy that it has in the upper mids and the treble, which makes itself shown, and that brings out a little bit of unpolished sound when you really start cranking the volume. Okay, the Pro, on the other hand, basically the same thing. I mean, the Pro and the S12, you can see it's basically the same thing. The Pro, very much equal up to about 5K, and then this extra energy that the Pro has here in the trebles, just overall I prefer the 12 Pro to the 12. Okay, let's put it that way. But this extra energy that it has here, it makes itself a little bit too known and colors the sound a little bit too much. So the S12 Pro, yes, will be more competent than the T10 at lower or mid volumes, but at higher volumes, I think the T10 actually has takes the better of this little battle here. Okay, so that's the S12. The next one I'm going to show you now is the Wuzetian. Okay, again, the Wuzetian, very similar in its overall graph. As you can see, it's same sort of bass extension, the rise of the pina. It's just this area of the upper mids and treble which is more energetic, and again, it's noticeable. It's not so much this, but it's this area here. This area here, this energy that it has, it's noticeable compared to the T10. At lower volumes, it makes the Wuzetian shine and let it come out on top. When you crank the volume, the T10 reduces this difference and makes itself very comparable to the Wuzetian as well. And then finally, my favorite, and I think it will still remain one of my favorite planars, which is the P1 Max. Let me just take away the graph here quickly of the T10. I mean, honestly, I don't know why people just didn't like it, because this is very, very nice. It's a nice graph. Everything sits within 76 to everything sits within a window of roughly 6.5 dBs, so no complaints there. Although the bass is not very prominent. It's got more than enough bass to, you know, go along with the mids and the treble that it has. Yes, fair enough. Compared to the T10, you do notice that it doesn't have the same sub bass extension, and there are songs where that is quite noticeable. The Charlie Puth songs, you will notice this, where the bass on the T10 just sounds fuller overall. But the P1 is a very good IEM. The P1 Max is truly a very good IEM, better than the P1s and the P1 Plus, in my opinion, better. The P1, might have a little bit more detail, a little bit more polish on that detail, but overall, in terms of fun and engagement, I mean, P1 Max definitely. Compared to the T10, look, they are, in my opinion, although there are similarities in the mids, upper mids, and treble, they are two different overall in the way they come across to be. One is a winner, one is a loser. They are good complements to each other, and the fact that you can get both of them for the price. You can buy these two IEMs for the price basically of what usually you buy, let's say an S12 Pro or an MP145 from HIDIS. It makes you think. It makes you. I mean, this is cheaper. These two IEMs together are cheaper than buying a Duno Talos. If you want to have, let's say, a very good planar selection of sound and what planars are capable of doing, you buy these two IEMs and you will be, in my opinion, covered 95% of the times, because there is really no other IEM with a reasonable price that can beat this combination outright. There isn't. Anyway, guys, that's my review of the ARTTI T10. I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, very, very nice IEM. Unfortunately, I'm sure it's not going to be possible to just audition it. So those that are willing to take the risk, I hope that my review was able to position it well next to other IEMs so that you can understand what sort of a sound that it's got. Nice HDK, Buzetian kind of vibe. That's a solid way of putting it. Or even an S12 Pro kind of vibe, just with slightly less upper mids and treble, and I think you'll be able to picture in your mind what sort of sound that the T10 has. All right, as always, like and subscribe. Help me grow this channel. I really appreciate all of those that give me a lot of comments and a lot of positive feedbacks and ideas on things to do. I really appreciate it, and I want you guys to carry on doing. I like this interaction, and so let's see if I get to 5,000 members soon. I mean, it's taking forever. I want to get to not 5,000. I actually want to have 100,000, but small baby steps. It's the way to go. So let's get to 5,000. All right, guys, take care now. Bye bye.